today we have Leslie Kim on the show. Now, Leslie is the founder of multiple businesses and they uplift human experiences and encourage positive change through art. So we'll let her tell us what that means exactly, but it sounds very exciting. She also creates artwork under the rock climbing indie brand Dynamite Starfish, and I took a look at some of this stuff, really cool, like clothing and stuff like that for rock climbers. It's awesome. And so I'm just going to bring her on. I'm going to let her tell the rest of her story. She has a very interesting podcast that she does. She's only done a couple of episodes, but I listened to one of them today. Fantastic stuff. And I'm going to do that right after this.
Help me, my brother, can you lend me a hand as I walk through this land of confusion? If we give to each other, then there's nothing to take. Let's live life for the moment before it slips away.
Hello, Leslie. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Jeff. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you're here, and I'm sorry about Jillian not being here. She's going to be very disappointed because she was excited to talk to you as well. But I'm glad you're here, and maybe we'll have to bring you back sometime if Jillian's too sad about it. So, so I started to read your bio out loud, and I thought, man, that's super long and awesome, and I'd rather just hear what you have to say. There was some stuff in there that we covered in the intro. That you run multiple businesses, right? I think it said multiple businesses that uplift the human experience. That's a pretty broad and ambitious project. What can you tell me about that?
Sure. Well, it's been a really long journey to kind of get here, and I don't even know if I really could put a finger on articulating what it is I was doing when I first started. So, I'm a freelance designer. I guess that's like business part one. That's not super exciting or inspiring. I help, people with businesses just, design packages and whatnot. And on my end, I make art and public art in the city of Los Angeles that hopefully brings a smile to people's faces and kind of helps people who, might be not having such a good day to those moments where you just see something on the street that speaks to you and you're like, oh, that was exactly the thing that I wanted to hear to help me get through my day. I try to kind of make art like that. It's not intended for that, but it ended up doing that.
So what's the medium of public art? Is it mural or is it sculpture? I mean, what kind of stuff are you doing?
I just finished a utility box project. So all of my art up until a few years ago was always just done in private. I never really showed anybody. And once I started showing people, what I did really started to change. And it also started to change the way I thought and the way I saw my creative expression. So right now I've been really into the public art thing. Like I said, I just did a public utility box. It's on the corner of Palms and Overland if you're in Los Angeles for any reason. And I also just finished a show, which was a digital projection at the Helms Design Center in Culver City. Yeah.
I love it when people play with that sort of different media like that. The digital projection stuff it can be really, really cool. So I wish I had seen that. So we had a couple of different sort of art related people on the show. One was David Levitar, who's a muralist out of South Beach in Miami. And his stuff is just all over the place, on the sides of buildings and stuff like that in Miami. And I just love his stuff. But it sounds like what you're doing is really cool. So you've been doing that just the last few years, you said, or is it even more recent than that?
The public art aspect of it, probably just the last few years. But I've been running my Dynamite Starfish business for, I think we're coming up on 6 years this year. And before that, I was just making art about anything, like about life and experiences. And I mean, anyone who wants to look at it can just go to dynamitestarfish.com. And if you don't know what a dynamite starfish is, which is almost going to be guaranteed to be 100% of listeners, it's a rock climbing move where you have all of your limbs outstretched and you're trying really hard to get upwards momentum. And I just thought the name was the perfect balance of like trying hard, being silly, and just the relentless optimism that a lot of rock climbers express.
Yeah, no, that's actually really cool. So I didn't know what a dynamite starfish was because I'm not a rock climber. Although I live in Chattanooga, which is like a rock climbing place. People come here, so if you want to come and climb rocks here, you can look me up. I'll be happy to hang out with you or something. So it'd be pretty cool. Yeah, that's never been my thing, but that's pretty cool. So another thing that I really liked about you is I said I watched or listened to one of the episodes of your podcast, which I apologize. It's called Same Human Being, right? That's the Same Human Being. And in the intro to it, I thought it was really interesting. You explained where that name came from. Can you explain to our audience how you came up with a Same Human Being?
Sure. Well, I can't take any credit for the phrase, really. It was something that I heard on actually quite a few like Dalai Lama talks. And he talks about how just all of human joy and suffering is connected, and you know we're never disconnected from another human being's experience. And he kind of just says it really beautifully, and no matter where you are or what kind of person you are, we are still the same human being. And I found that really resonant and beautiful, and I love the idea, so I named my podcast after that.
Yeah, no, I really love that. So, and I think you've just had a couple of episodes, but what inspired you to get into podcasting?
The impetus was probably the quarantines. I really enjoyed kind of going out and talking to people and having different conversations with like a huge like range of personalities through my rock climbing business. And I would set up tables at rock climbing gyms and festivals, and I'd love just talking to people and you know, talk about anything from like cooking to like, I don't know, life, traveling, whatever. And I couldn't do that anymore. And I realized like using your voice to connect with people was really important. And something also really significant that happened was that my grandmother passed away in November of 2020. And she was the person who really raised me because both my parents worked and I was at home pretty much all day, every day with my grandmother. She grew up in North Korea under the Japanese oppression, or the Japanese occupation, which was really oppressive towards the Korean people. And, you know, like you just weren't really allowed to be yourself or live your life or anything. And she eventually escaped the country and went down to South Korea and started over. And there's a lot more to her story, but the first episode, really, I just wanted to share her story and maybe kind of tie that into, I guess, why I find it important to uplift the human experience, because my grandmother was a person who went through like some really awful things, but coming out on the other end, she was like the brightest and most positive person that I could ever have known, and so generous and loving. And I kind of just wanted to think about like how that came to be.
I wish I could have met her, and I'm very sorry for your loss because it's always hard to lose someone close to you. But particularly this year, it's hard because in the last year we've all felt a sense of general loss, right? Like all the time. Like this year's been really hard. And in a way, I mean, our podcast is a product of the coronavirus as well. And we were planning it before, but our first episode released on the first day of the shutdown, like literally the first day. So, and we do it live, as you know, because you're on the show right now. So we had this like guest scheduled, and we're like, should we do the show? Shouldn't we? We're gonna go to studio and do it in the studio, and it didn't work out that way. But but it's also been really great because, like you said, you can connect on a different level, not just with your audience, but even with guests. And I don't believe you've had guests on your show, but if you ever do, you'll see what I mean. It's just an amazing way to connect with people. And of course, going on shows is also really cool. I mean, what you're doing now is super fun. I've been on lots of shows and I really enjoy doing that as well. So in your bio, which we shared in our Facebook group, it also said that you were a college dropout in an abusive relationship, deeply depressed, right? So that wasn't that long ago. So how did you get from there to here? Like, how did that work?
Just going through that journey has really informed what I do now. And something that I have realized through all of that is, the longer you kind of deny who you are, or, you think you're just going to be okay with, following along what you're told to do, or just fitting in with the status quo, like that all comes back to bite you in the end. And I learned that in a very difficult way. I think since I was really young, like I knew I wanted to be an artist, but I was coerced into studying the biological sciences. And, it didn't really work out. So I dropped out of college because as soon as I started hitting the like bio labs and like the more intense classes, I realized, like all this stuff is really interesting. And I wasn't bad at it, like I was okay at it, but I just didn't see myself enjoying that life in the future. And I think part of that was just, I had a gut feeling that I was meant to do something else. I didn't know what that was yet. I didn't have the confidence to go out and say, like, hey, I'm an artist. I didn't have any training either. So I ended up dropping out and, I landed myself into a really terrible relationship, which when that ended, that lasted for 5 years. And when that ended, I had really kind of decimated my social network. I didn't have any support system around me. I had really bad relationship with my family. And I was really forced to think about why this had happened and why I had let it get to a point where I had hurt myself so badly. And I started to think about, just different ways that you talk to yourself and treat yourself, and the different things that you tell yourself is okay. And you're not listening to yourself. You are telling yourself that things are okay when that may not actually be true. And I just started on a journey that I think a lot of people start on and a lot of people are still on. And it kind of never ends, of just learning more about who you are, how you came to be here, and what you should do with yourself in the future to make all of those experiences more meaningful. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've rambled a little bit.
No, that's I wanted to interrupt you like 6 times, not because I wasn't interested, but because you kept saying things that I'm like, whoa, I need to remember this and like circle back on that. So I'm going to try to remember them and take them roughly in order. So one thing you said is that you dropped out of school because not because you weren't good at what you were doing, but because you just felt like you should be doing something different. And I'm thinking to myself, man, my life would have been so different if I had listened to myself when I thought that same thing. Because you probably don't know this, but many of our listeners do know that my story is one of going to law school and practicing law because I wanted to make money, not because I wanted to be a lawyer. And that wasn't a good strategy. Like, people should drop out of school. I mean, maybe I'll get in trouble for saying that, but like there's something positive about recognizing what it is that you're supposed to be doing and go do that thing instead. And so that's awesome. And I wish you could tell me like how was that decision? Because it seems like it would be really hard. Because like I was scared to drop out of school. Like I took a year off and I was like, but I'm going back for sure. It was like, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I took a year off to try to sort out what I wanted to do. Didn't figure it out. So I just kept going to school until I ran out of things to take. And you did the opposite. You were like, wow, I'm not sure exactly what I want to do, but I know that this isn't it. So I'm going to just go do something else.
I think maybe I have summed it up in a way that sounds more straightforward than it was. But while I was doing my biology classes, I was also taking some classes in sociology, and I was studying internationally at the time in Singapore. I took a study abroad program through the University of California system, and I just found that was more interesting to me. Like, I wanted to learn about people, not, biology. And I found that I was pretty good at it. Like, I would write papers and teachers would like it, and I'd do presentations in class. And again, this is such a long story, but I got engaged to someone who was from Asia but lived in Australia. So I actually moved to Australia for a year and enrolled in school there. And while I was enrolling as a biology major, I got really sick. And I think that might have actually been my body's way of telling me, don't do this.
Oh, that's
Because
wow. Now that's fascinating because I'm very interested in that actual topic. I don't know that I've ever talked about it on the show before, but I think about this a lot. Like I got sick, and that's what caused me to quit working. And I feel sometimes that it was my body saying, "No, you're doing the wrong thing. You need to do something different. Like you need to fix this problem, right?" And I mean, on one hand, that sounds kind of weird. Like, but I read this book a long time ago by Michael Crichton. It's his autobiography, and he was a Harvard-trained medical doctor. Most people don't know that about him. He's the guy who wrote Jurassic Park is actually a doctor, right? And fascinating guy, had all kinds of interesting theories, some of which were kind of nonsense. But one of his theories that I thought was really interesting was when he was in med school, he would talk to people sort of like in his downtime, and he would say to people he was in a heart ward or something, and he would say to them like, "Well, what do you think caused your heart attack?" And no one said like poor diet, right? They were like, "Well, I was really unhappy at work," or "I was," it was like without fail. If you just asked like, "Why did you have a heart attack?" the answer was always something like, "Because I wasn't doing what I was supposed to do," or "Because I was cheating on my wife," or it was always something like there was something going on in their life that was creating pressure, and that's what they thought caused the attack on their heart, not like the things that we commonly assume. And I think there's a lot of wisdom to that. I mean, obviously, eating cheeseburgers every day isn't going to help your heart out, but at the same time, like there's something to be said about the jolly people seem to live longer, right? It just seems that way, right? Like people that are happy and seem content in their life, usually seem to be more successful and also more healthy as a result of that. It's kind of this is something I think is very interesting. So it's interesting you said that. So now there's a lot to unpack in what you just said there too, though. Not only that, but you said first that you were doing a study abroad in Singapore, which, I mean, we can almost do a whole show just on what it was like to live in Singapore for a while. And then you moved to Australia. We could do a whole show on that. So that's actually already doing things that most people don't do, right? So like how did you make the decision to like move to Singapore and take classes there? Because like a lot of people, I think, wish that they did study abroad.
Well, I really wanted to study abroad because I had grown up in a suburb of Los Angeles in the San Fernando Valley, if anyone's familiar with that. It's not particularly exciting. It's just kind of a regular suburb. And I was always kind of unhappy with, I suppose, like the cultural offerings. I think it's just, something common that kids who grow up in suburbs experience. Like you want to see more, you want to see the world. And where I ended up going to college was in Orange County in Irvine. And it was kind of just more of the same, like suburban lifestyle, except everyone there was a bit more like higher income. And, I didn't really get along with the people at the college. I wanted to see more, quote unquote, real people. So I actually I didn't have any friends who were in school. I hung out with people who were just like local people that did not go to school. And eventually, I just saw like a poster somewhere for the Education Abroad program. And I had some scholarship money and I had my part-time job. So I started saving up. And I found out that, as long as you could cover your travel costs, the cost of going to school was actually cheaper because you paid like the tuition of the school you were going to.
Awesome.
So
was that like a year or a semester, or what was the duration?
It was one semester.
Cool.
But I think I stayed for an extra month. I got there a little bit early and left a little late. But it was such an interesting experience because, I'm Asian, but I've never been to like Asia really. I've been to Korea a couple times, and most of that was just tourist stuff or visiting like my family. And when I went there, I was really just blown away by the cultural immersion. And being in Singapore, a lot of people speak English, and it shouldn't even have been that drastic of a change, but just like I just had my mind absolutely blown by the difference in culture. Like people speak differently, behave differently, believe different things, prioritize different things. And I think that it really was a significant experience for me.
Yeah, that's it looks like Jillian's joined us, although she's muted, so she can't talk, but she's waving at least, so for people who are watching. But anyway, so okay, so you went to Singapore for just over a semester, a little bit more than a semester, right? And then you went down to Australia, right? That's what you did. So you got engaged in Singapore, or did you get engaged back in California?
No, it was in Singapore to someone who was like his family lived there, but he was going to school in Australia. So that's how I ended up going to school in Australia. Was
Okay.
you
So
follow your heart sometimes.
yeah, no, well, and that's, I mean, that's what we're supposed to do, I think, right? I mean, if you want to live the interesting life, you just have to go wherever your heart takes you. So,
It didn't
all right.
work out, but it was fun.
But you got to go to
Right.
Australia. You got sick and were able to quit your career as a biologist. So it could have been worse, right? Like you might never have figured that out otherwise. So how long were you in Australia?
1 year. And I ended up leaving because I realized the relationship wasn't working. Like we were too young, we were too naive. It wasn't practical, and I was just seriously running out of money, and I couldn't get a job in Australia because the work visa situation was just really, it was really hard. So yeah, I came back, and I came back to Los Angeles, and I was pretty well, I felt like my life had been uprooted, like completely just torn apart because I had been away for so long and I didn't really know who I was anymore. And it was at that time, I guess I was pretty vulnerable at that time, was when I got into a relationship with someone who was just not very good for me. And I think that was my first real encounter with like being so close to someone who had a huge amount of trauma as a child. And I think I was naive to believe that he could heal from it without like some real help. And yeah, I think I just, was really hurt by that. And I think at the end of it, I probably had PTSD to some degree. And
Hmm.
I really thought that I was going to lose my sanity. I thought I was going to lose like everything like in life. Like I'd always thought that I was a smart person and I made good decisions, and I started to really think that I had a lack of good judgment. And it was like a weird time in life where, everything was sort of spiraling. And that's when I started to, make more art and sort of slowly, like one piece at a time, put things back together in a way that worked for me. And the priorities were, in a way that made sense for me.
So that really explains why you're so passionate about sharing art with people now, right? Because you feel like it healed you, and you want to use your art to help other people, right? So, and that's what you're doing, right? So you said your day job, if you will, is making, helping people design packages, right? That's what you do, which is cool. I mean, actually, every once in a while everyone needs a package, but for sure I'm thinking you're talking about for businesses, right? Like figuring out like engineering of packaging, right? That's really what you're doing. But which I think that has sort of an artistic sort of feel to it too, actually, right? So it must be satisfying on some level. But you move from that to doing these public art displays, right? And you've been doing that the last couple of years, and you started doing Dynamite Starfish. I know you said that, like, in that's another form of art, right? That's something where you're selling to rock climbing people. And then you do this thing called the Chaos to Growth Project. Can you tell me just a little bit about that?
Sure. I'm not sure how long it's going to keep going for. It was something that I did during the lockdown. I just made a drawing for my Dynamite Starfish audience, and it was a line drawing, super simple, of like the coronavirus spike protein. And instead of having spikes at the top, it has blooming flowers. And, it was actually my fiance who came up with the words "from chaos comes new growth," but that's what's written underneath the drawing. And, he also has such an interesting story, like way, way more interesting than mine, I think. But You know, I think the reason why we have a good relationship is because we both have been through some really kind of bizarre and chaotic experiences. And, you know, we've realized the only way to get through them is to grow. And you know, you can have every excuse in the world to be angry about your circumstances or want to like blame other people, but you know, truly, when chaos is presented to you, like, your only productive option is to learn from it and grow from it. So I made this drawing, just kind of threw it out there, and you know, a hospital in South Dakota somehow saw it, and they wanted to gift their nurses with like journals that had that art on it. So I did a little crowdfunding project. I got some people to donate, and we funded 200 journals to send to this hospital in South Dakota. And you know, since then I've just been doing like little similar, get the art out and give back to, you know, some people kind of
I
things.
I love this concept. I've been telling people for a long time, and I don't want to minimize the impact of coronavirus because it's clearly a terrible thing. But I've been telling people for a long time that I'm actually very optimistic about the future, because I know for me, going through like getting leukemia and like ending up bankrupt made me a much better person. It made me the person I am today. I grew from that experience, and all of the people that I really look up to in life have gone through very, very hard things. And I feel like right now the world's kind of hopefully coming out of, but like we've been going through for the last 12 months or maybe even more, this sort of really hard collective experience. And obviously some people are not going to come out of it better. Some people have died, and that's, there's no fixing that. But for us that are fortunate enough to survive, we have an opportunity to learn from this experience. And I believe that even if it's only some of us, we're going to learn some really important lessons, and those lessons are going to benefit the whole world. And that's really what the message of the chaotic growth is. So I'm glad I asked that, because I almost glossed over it. But that's like a huge, like, I actually kind of want to steal your drawing now. So you need to send me one so I can share it with people in our Facebook group so they can see that, because that sounds amazing. I really love the concept. So we're going to wrap up actually just a second here. Before we do, I have one question which Jillian and I always ask every guest. And since you're a huge fan of the show and have watched a million times, I'm sure, well, that'd be more than anyone because we don't have a million episodes. You already know what the question is, but I will tell you anyway. So the question is, what does living the best version of your last life ever mean to you?
I think for me, the best last life ever is a life where a person is allowed to realize their potential, to learn fully and wholly what they are, and then to go ahead and apply that knowledge to a task or a lifestyle that is meaningful and constructive. So that was kind of long, but
no, that's perfect. Yeah, you have nothing to worry about. That is very, very good. So thank you so much for being on the show. If people want to get a hold of you or they want to connect with you, is the best way to do that over on your Instagram that we shared earlier, which I believe is just your name, at Leslie Sam Kim. Right on Instagram, so people can follow you there and they can see some of your art and some of your other stuff there. Hopefully you got all that fun stuff on there. I should have looked before I brought that up, so if not, I apologize to all of the people that run over there to see it right away. But thank you so much for being here. Everyone else, I will be back shortly, and maybe even Jillian will join me. We will see. But thank you, Leslie. I look forward to talking to you again very soon. So thank you very much. And everyone else, have an amazing day, and I will be right back after this. I'm super happy that we had Leslie on today. It was fantastic. Her answer might be the best answer ever to our final question. Yeah, and she's watching in the backstage laughing at me right now, thinking I'm crazy, but that's all right. I have no problem with that. I'm willing to go out on a limb, Leslie, and tell you that was a great answer.
And that was great. I actually watched a bit of the video when I was on Facebook, and then decided, oh, it's a little more quiet now, so I can jump on. So I I think that's just amazing with the journaling and things like that. It
Yeah.
really kind of puts things into perspective on chaos.
Yeah, I know.
and how to manage it.
I need to see this image of the coronavirus with the flowers coming out of it. So hopefully she will share that with us. But otherwise, I think if we Google it, we could probably find it. So, Jillian, is there anything you want to say before we wrap up here?
I want to wish everybody a wonderful week, and remember to live the best version of your last life ever.